Golden State Media Concepts Sci-Fi Podcast. Together we dive into the world of sci-fi and science fiction. From episodes of Star Trek, Star Wars, to The Walking Dead, Resident Evil, all the hot new science fiction movies from the backdoors of Marvel or DC. The Golden State Media Concepts Sci-Fi Podcast. You'll never look at science fiction the same way again.
On today's show, we got Independence Day Resurgence, July releases for the theater, and some news on some sequels. Stick around, you don't want to miss it.
Want to find out what movies to go see? Then check out the GSMC Movie Podcast. It's your ticket to the latest movies, whether it's a new blockbuster event, romantic, comedy, or action flick. This show has got it all covered. They talk some what to go see now. Don't bother. What's hot on Netflix and everything in between. That's GSMCpodcast.com/movie-podcast. When it's all about the movies, it has to be this new show. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Hey everyone and welcome. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Sci-Fi Podcast. I'm your host as always, Drew. Let's get into it. Last week we talked a bit ramping up to the release of the new Independence Day. We talked about invasion flicks and some series and which ones were good. Obviously didn't really get around to all of them, just highlighting some favorite ones. Now the movie has come out. It had a Friday release, did fairly well, however wasn't able to beat out Finding Dory, of course what would. But looking at the movie itself, this is going to be a little bit of a review, going to talk about a little bit what happened in the film. First off, expectations, right? Saw the previews, looks like it was mostly just going to be a fun romp in the action realm, and that was the case. A lot of people saying that it was formulaic, it was cliche, it was corny, all these other things, but that they still loved it. It's a fun movie to go see, and I just want to put into context here. When the first Independence Day from 20 years ago came out, it was a disaster movie. It was a big budgeted, big scope sci-fi movie, and the invasion film and the disaster film had not been done on this scope, and it had not been done in quite a while. Science fiction in the early to mid 90s was not as prevalent as it is now, and coming in from the late 80s into the 90s, really you just had Star Trek coming back and the Next Generation, and you had, I think, Terminator 2 was released in 92, but sci-fi wasn't back. It wasn't as prevalent, it wasn't as common, it wasn't being put out there. Independence Day really changed all that. In 96, after Independence Day, a lot of stuff started getting developed by way of science fiction, dealing with aliens, dealing with disaster flicks, and a lot of those perpetuated even more by Roland Emmerich, who directed Independence Day, who did Day After Tomorrow, who did 2012, those types of disaster films where we see it on a worldly level. That's what Independence Day had done. This new one, it looks like it's formulaic and it looks like it's all these things simply because ever since in the last 20 years, so many science fiction films have been done. So many things involving alien technology and big budget stuff and, levitating car. I mean, it was difficult. This wasn't going to reinvent the wheel is what I'm trying to say. It obviously was a little bit more than what Independence Day was, but it was going to have a natural comicness to it simply because of when the first Independence Day came out, we were looking at the world as it was. Here comes this infusion of technology. Now here's what it's going to look like after that's been infused. Very well paced, of course, very funny that a lot of the stuff from the original film had. Didn't really have time for subtlety. Again, when you have this technology that you've infused with, when you're going from the Earth to the Moon in a matter of seconds, the scope of the film, by comparison to the original, had gotten a little bit larger. So, Independence Day, the first one, by comparison, a fairly small film in scope. And this one, I mean, it's got to push it up. And it leaves room, if you've seen it, it obviously leaves room for another one to be made. And the difference between this and any other Joe Schmo type science film that's getting brought out, this brings in a brand recognition and it brings in character recognition into essentially a different type of movie. This isn't really another disaster / invasion movie. I mean, there are aspects of those because, you know, an even bigger ship, of course, comes down and it causes wreckage, but you're already looking at a world that is established that is preparing for these types of things, that has a different type of technology that's otherworldly, that was different. So the span of time, and what I brought up on the previous show was I want to see where Earth is in these 20 years. It, of course, gives us that dream and the aspiration of almost that Star Trek-like utopianism that we talked about really in our first show. When we talked about the future that is a dystopia, post-apocalyptic utopian, the one where we talk about utopian societies where people are getting along and that really Star Trek's the only one that's maintained that, that's where we see Independence Day. That's where we've seen that they work towards this, obviously, since the aliens had come down and started destroying things around the globe, that humanity has now banded together against this particular force, which is obviously, it's another type of device that the Watchmen previously used. So, granted, there are pockets. There's a part in the film where they go to, you know, of course, it's in Africa, because apparently, like in everything else, we just forget about Africa, where there are warlords and stuff like that. There was an alien ship that had landed, and it was the only one of those ships that had landed, and there was a group of fighters that had learned really how to do hand-to-hand combat with the aliens. Again, it's almost over the top corny, but it works in there, and it gives it a little bit of color in this new cast that would have otherwise just been the same stuffed shirts from the first one. So that actually was pretty cool. Jeff Goldblum is Jeff Goldblumiest, not weird. He's kind of kooky. It was just a fun movie, and looking at what they had done and bringing in those older characters added some levity to it, but the action in it was pretty entertaining. It wasn't going to reinvent the wheel. It wasn't going to do what the original Independence Day had done, because really that's what film has been moving towards since the mid to late 90s. So I wasn't expecting a game changer as far as this film came to. The one thing I want to say, though, and I'm going to preface this with the distinction between what is considered to be a plot hole and what is just a gripe, okay? People want to talk about editing inconsistencies or certain coincidences that they deem as being a plot hole. When I reviewed the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movie, is a complaint that I got from a friend of mine was that, they just so happen to have this machine that could synthesize this. Okay, that is not a plot hole. It's a device that is used for the mere purpose for shortening time. There are certain things that have to be done that are just going to be used as devices to not make the film drag on any longer. That is not a plot hole. A plot hole is when you have established rules and established technologies and other things that get overlooked or misused or denied. In Independence Day, Resurgence, they have access to force fields. If you remember from the first Independence Day, they couldn't get to any of the ship because there was that force field. They had to upload the virus to remove the force field so they could finally attack the ship. They got the technology. They built the weapons. They built all new flying machines. They built everything on here. But yet, when the aliens come back and just start wrecking everything, we're not using force fields? We didn't bother. We didn't bother putting a force field around the White House. We didn't bother putting a force field. After the aliens attack, they literally send everybody in the presidential chain of command, or the status of who becomes of the lineage there. They send them all to one place. No force field there. Area 51, the new basically mainstay Central Command battle station, that didn't even have a force field. None of the aircraft that were used to try to take down the new mothership, they tried using fighters and bombers, which, by the way, side note, the bombers heavily designed after the B-1, which is pretty freaking awesome. Even those didn't have force fields. The little alien craft and everything they fought against, those had force fields, even in the first one. And yet, Earth did not employ force fields. We used the force field one time, and that was used as an offensive maneuver for the sake of trapping basically the queen alien, blowing it up with an A-bomb, but containing the blast. We used it as a way of protecting ourselves, but almost as an offensive measure. We didn't use it. Again, just a great example how non-dedicated we are to actual defense of our borders and of our assets, but more just trying to use them as proactive and a way to attack. I think there was a huge oversight and a huge misstepping. To me, that's a plot hole. Where were the force fields? But outside of that, it was still an incredibly fun movie. Go watch it. It's fun, summer popcorn movie fun. All right, so that concludes our first segment for today. Just stick around. We'll be right back. This is the GSMC Sci-Fi Podcast Show. We'll be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
All right, we are back. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Sci-Fi Podcast. Now, July is upon us. We're getting here into the dead of summer, and that means some fun time summer programming at your local cinema. There are, as far as the way of science fiction goes, there's going to be a few releases. Some are not going to be the big budget type. Some of them are going to be a little bit smaller. As far as that goes. In the beginning of July, we're going to kick it off with the Purge election year. Now, horror and science fiction are not that far removed. Honestly, if you take the brain out of a science fiction film, you're going to end up with a horror film. The Purge election year, it looks kind of fun. Honestly, you could probably just put some cell phone video footage of guys beating up Trump supporters at his rallies and probably have a little bit more gory of a movie. That's coming out. One that's going to be in limited releases is called Equals, and it's Kristen Stewart, so if you're not a fan already, just don't go. That one brings in, it's another one of those emotions are removed and then a virus hits that causes people to emote again. It's been done. We'll see if there's a new spin on it. But I mostly want to get into the two biggest releases that are going to be coming out in the summer, and they both come out next month. New Ghostbusters film, new Star Trek film. Now, obviously, the new Star Trek film series is quasi-reboot. Obviously, he's trying to establish just a separate timeline. That one was started quite a few years ago. The new Ghostbusters film, this is the first of the rebooted series that they're probably going to try to go for. Now, I've talked a little bit about the Ghostbusters thing. I am a very big Ghostbusters fan of the original Ghostbusters. Even the real Ghostbusters cartoon show based off Ghostbusters. And I've been a member of this group that has been railing against the prospect of making this reboot happen and railing against not the fact that there was a all-female cast, but just the people they had picked. And now, I mean, I'm going to back away from the ledge here. Even if this film manages to be awful, it's not going to take away anything from the Ghostbusters that I love. So I can't be mad about that. I can't be upset about them attempting to further the brand. It will not diminish anything about my childhood. And it's a mantra I have to repeat. It's not going to ruin anything. You can that is the beauty about having those things being in a format that can live forever. It's not going to tarnish it. And look, I survived the Star Wars prequels. Okay? I know about the group of kids that are possibly going to be reared with these being their Ghostbusters, just as I had to live with kids that had to be reared with their Star Wars being the young Anakin, the Jar Jar Binks. I had to live through that. Now, can we possibly see the correlation between those movies and how much kids between the ages of 16 to 20 suck? Science, we should dedicate some money to that. But I'm resigned to the fact that this is going to happen. And there's just a few things that I have hoped for. The main problem that I had with it was the type of humor that was involved and in making sure that the Ghostbusters stayed smart. The original Ghostbusters, they were all scientists. They were doctorate holders. Even Winston, the video game that they came out with a few years ago, which was written by Aykroyd, co-written by Ramis, even Winston Zeddemore, who comes in because they're at the museum, is like, oh, when I was studying for my doctorate, even he ended up getting a PhD. Remember, he came on as just an extra hand. Even he has achieved that level of education and intelligence. But for the comedy part, my concern is what made the original Ghostbusters as cool as they were was the comedy played part in subtlety. In Ramis and Aykroyd and Murray, and really the most boisterous person out there was, Annie Potts, or the subtlety and the humor, because the dialogue made it funny enough. The performance was. Now, I got to tell you, looking at this cast, short of Kristen Wiig, the rest of these ladies are about as subtle as an atom bomb. And I love Kate McKinnon. And if you're watching Saturday Night Live now, you must be watching for her. She is the show. But as an impressionist, she's used to being over the top. Melissa McCarthy, another over the topper. So my concern is my concern was the things that made the original ones really great are going to be not in this film. And I was hanging on to that hate so much. But ultimately, you just got to get rid of that. Because, again, it's not going to diminish what the Ghostbusters were. It's not going to take away anything from Stantz and Venkman and Spangler and Zeddemore, those Ghostbusters, it's not going to take it away. So I'll give this movie a shot. I want to try to enjoy it as its own thing. Hopefully it's more homage than what I'm expecting, but, you know, I'll keep my mind open. Okay? I said it. I'll keep my mind open. Now about Star Trek, obviously we've seen this, what's been going on here the last couple of years. I've been very happy with the product they've been putting out. J.J. Abrams not directing this one. They got Justin Lin previously of the Fast and Furious franchise. It was time, I guess, to do a movie that wasn't going to be so space-oriented. From the trailers, you can see that the Enterprise gets destroyed, that they go to a planet, so we're going to see the gang on planet really interacting with those types of things and the alien race there. They had to do that a few times in even the original ones, like Undiscovered Country. They did it in Star Trek Insurrection with the Next Generation crew. So they're just trying to change up the scenery. Obviously, this one is going to be marred a little bit with the sad news of Anton Yelchin passing away. Man, sometimes truth is stranger than fiction, man. When you hear it's a car accident, you get something in your mind about what that means, and then you come to find out that it was a freak accident involving him getting pinned by his own car. It was sad. He was only 27 years old. As you know, Yelchin played Pavel Chekhov there in the series, and it's sad because obviously it will have to be accounted for in some way, whether we'll see some type of demise in the character between films, whether he will be recasted is another question. But yeah, in and of itself, the person himself, really talented actor. I would go out and try to discover some of the other stuff that he's been in, including some other horror sci-fi like Fright Night. He was in the remake of that. He's also in a great film called Rudderless, starring Billy Crudup, directed by William H. Macy. Good movie, good music movie as well. But yeah, so Star Trek Beyond coming out here. It looks like Ghostbusters comes out July 15th. Star Trek the following week. I'm going to go see them both. And, I'm going to take my daughter. I'm going to take my daughter to see Ghostbusters. Hopefully she'll enjoy it. And, of course, I'm always going to enjoy some Star Trek. She may not like it, but I'm going to go see it on my own then if that's the case. So July, those two films going to be hugely impacting. All right, this is the Golden State Media Concepts Sci-Fi podcast. We'll be right back.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news, both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, we are back as the Golden State Media Concepts Sci-Fi podcast. Now, some of you may know or may not know that there have been some sequels that have been in development here. Some were kind of expected, some maybe wanting 20 years ago, and then others that are just getting done because of brand recognition. So the first on the plate, for those of you who remember, there was the film Prometheus, which came out a few years ago. Ridley Scott directed a prequel to Alien, even the first one from 1979. Designed to be the first of a prequel trilogy that Ridley Scott has designed here. Now he's controlling the entire thing. If you remember the Alien franchise previously to Prometheus, Ridley Scott did the first. Then that was handed off to Jim Cameron, who did Aliens in '86, which, they're two different movies, but I just think Aliens was a superior product. Then Alien 3 that was done. I think David Fincher directed that one. And then they did Alien Resurrection, which is even further in the future. So Ridley Scott came back to the series, made Prometheus, and now is doing Alien Covenant, currently in production. And then they're going to do a third one. So for those of you that knew that they were making a sequel to Prometheus, obviously Prometheus had ended on the kind of a cliffhanger where you see the emergence of the xenomorph, what we commonly know as the alien. They're filming right now. There's going to be another ship that goes out to find the... maybe they crash land on the planet, or they're trying to find the Prometheus. They're trying to find the vessel, and the only inhabitant of the world there is Michael Fassbender's character. He's the synthetic, the android from the ship. That's getting done. Like I said, there will be another one following this, basically all to build up toward the 1979 Alien. But the convention of that, and I'm not big on the idea of these prequels that are being made right now. Great that you can make these as they are, but my problem with it is now that the xenomorph exists, don't watch them chronologically. The payoff from that first Alien movie, when they were filming that movie, before the alien pops out of the dude's chest, that the actors weren't told what was going to happen in that scene. So the fear in them is a legitimate fear of them having no idea what was about to go on. Now, not only does that have an effect on the actors, but it has an effect on the audience. The build-up to what occurs on the ship is part of nobody having any idea in the audience of what was going to occur when you walked in the theater or before you put on the DVD. If you're watching it for the first time, why would you watch these three movies that take place before Alien? Because now you know what the alien looks like. Now you see what happens to spawn them. To me, it ruins a lot of that suspense that the first one brought. And, now I just talked about, I won't have this take away from the original, you do whatever you want. I'm just saying, for those people that saw that in 1979 and how kind of groundbreaking that was for a science fiction horror movie that it was, now they can go and watch these prequels. I'm like, because I've seen what those look like and see what but when they first saw it, it can't replace that. And I think we're going to lose a lot of the great quality that Alien attempts to do if you've already seen these prequels. Just my personal take on it. Now, one that's in the making that, this is another franchise. Not even a franchise. It's a one film that has become a cult classic and has other, things to say. It's got good pop culture appeal, is Blade Runner. Another Ridley Scott another Ridley Scott film, based off a Philip K. Dick short story that Ridley made in 1982. So he made it actually just after Alien. Was concerned about making another science fiction movie because he had just done Alien, but this is it's a totally different type movie. They're making a Blade Runner. They're making a Blade Runner sequel, and as much as I say that, and as much as I bemoan it, I can't stop the fact they're making it. Harrison Ford is going to be in it. Ryan Gosling's going to be in it, apparently. And I love Harrison Ford, and I love Ryan Gosling. I love Blade Runner. I love all three of those things. I don't know. I don't know if I can. I would have to see something from it. I would have to know what it is they're going to do. Because right now, I don't know. Ridley Scott was very adamant about Deckard being himself a replicant, which by the way, and for those people that are out there and believe that Deckard's, I know all the little hints and all the other stuff that they put in there. The point of the movie falls apart if he's a replicant. It absolutely falls apart. And to me, when this film is about a guy who's so out of touch with humanity and seeing the efforts that these synthetic individuals are going through to gain and live that a little bit more and how it impacts him, it means nothing if he's one of those androids. It means nothing. It should be about him rediscovering humanity, rediscovering his humanity, rather than him just being like, oh, well, he's trying to track down these things and he's one himself. It's completely lost at that point. Anyway, they're making a sequel. So if Ridley Scott was so adamant about him being a replicant, obviously would have had to have been a model, much like Rachel, who had no expiration date, which again, gets another device, like, ooh, let's just make another thing to throw in there to have him live longer. But Ryan Gosling's the new blood. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how that all goes. And keeping all the same thing here, Predator. Predator's getting made. Not sure if it's a reboot or a sequel. The latest happenings, the latest rumblings I've heard about it is that it will be a bit of a reboot. Shane Black, interestingly enough, Shane Black was in the original Predator. He was an actor in it. Shane Black, mostly known for his writing. He wrote Lethal Weapon, The Last Boy Scout, which is one of my favorites. He wrote Iron Man 3. Did he direct that one too? He directed Iron Man 3. I think he co-wrote it. He did Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, which if you guys haven't seen that, I would definitely go peep that picture. He's doing this new Predator. So he has a little bit, he's got a resume and he has experience with the franchise, and he's trying to do something really cool, trying to do something that is recognizable and true to it, but trying to do something a little bit different as well. I'm excited about that. I liked Predators, the most recent one they made with Adrian Brody, where it's supposed to sort of be like almost Predator 2, Predator 3 type thing, but since they were doing it off Earth, it could have taken place really between any of those, but definitely harken back to the first Predator film. That one was really fun. I actually saw that while I was deployed to Iraq. I saw it at the base theater, and I enjoyed that one. And it was one, because I don't believe that one was rated R, but it was still exciting. So this one will probably be an R, but that's in production. Shane Black's going to make that, and then he's going to move on to making Doc Savage, which that'll be a whole other show. That we're going to go into that one. That's cool. They got Dwayne Johnson. Looks like he's going to be playing that character. So we got updates here on Alien falling to another Ridley Scott film that he's involved in with Blade Runner. That news there. Don't know about it. And then where you had previously seen Alien vs. Predator films, we got new news on Predator. That one probably won't be coming out till early 2017, maybe at the earliest. Probably get saved for next summer. So there's more sci-fi again. And it sounds like as I'm going through sequels or redone properties here, that there isn't much too new, but there's some new stuff out there. But that's pretty exciting. Anyway. Well, guys, that concludes the show. Thanks for hanging out with me here. You can get us on GSMCpodcast.com. You can get us on iTunes as well. You can also check us out on Facebook and Twitter. Let us know what you think. This has been the Golden State Media Concepts Sci-Fi Podcast. Thanks for hanging out. I've been Drew. You've been wonderful, and we'll talk to you next week.